7, raising the roof. We'll have to have everything ready to put together when the Smallies come, Amos said one day. We'll need 30 rafters all notched and ready to fit together. Nothing goes worse at a house raising than to find that the timbers won't fit. Then it all has to be done over again while everyone stands around wasting time. What will we use for the roof? We don't have any shingles, Solomon said. Then Amos explained how the roof would be put on. First, they would have to allow for 2 long pieces on the top of the side walls. These would stick out 2 or 3 feet and would have deep notches to make up a long cross timber on which the roof boards would be finally placed. And notched at one end, timbers on which the roof bands would be finally placed. The rafters would be hoisted up into place and notched at one end to fit into the wall logs, and at the other end to fit into the rafter that came from the other side wall. Each rafter was smoothed in one side with a strange-looking kind of axe called an adze. It was especially made for trimming off the face of a log. The 30 trees that were trimmed for rafters were spruce, light and strong, and easy to work with. When these were put into place 2 feet apart, smaller cross pieces were fitted into shallow notches 12 or 15 inches apart. On these cross pieces, the roof boards would fit. Then they were laid across them. Solomon was still puzzled by this explanation, so Amos tried to show it in another way how it worked. It's like this, he said. The rafters hold up the roof. They have the strength. The cross pieces hold the rafters apart and also give a smooth surface for the roof boards to lie on, and the roof boards shield the rain or snow. See how it works? Solomon was still puzzled. But what keeps the rain from coming between the boards? So Amos started to explain some more. Do you see those wide boards I have so carefully cut out of the center of the logs? The ones I have laid out in the sun to dry? Do you notice what has happened to them? Yes, said Solomon. They have all curled up with a valley in the center. That is right. Amos went on. If we had well-seasoned wood, we would not have to do that. But it works out all right for us. When I lay the green board in the sun, it dries fast on one side. That makes the top side shrink, and the board gets a shallow valley on one side. Then the roof boards are laid. The first layer goes on with the valleys facing up. Then over the joint where the boards meet, we place a board. Then over the joint where the boards meet, we place a board with the valley down. See how it works? The valleys drain the rain from the little hill in between, and it runs down to the ground. Solomon was impressed by this clever way of putting the roof together. He hurried on with his questions. Always his father would answer him patiently, for he knew this was important education for his son, and in this venture they were partners. It took a week to trim the shape of the rafters. Even then, they were not enough roof boards to cover the roof. They set a date for inviting the Smallies to come for the roof raising. Solomon remembered the date well, for it was his father's 36th birthday. Yes, it was the 17th of October, just about a month after their arrival in Salisbury. Solomon had thought many times about what Mr. Smalley had said when he left a couple of weeks before. When you need us, send the boy up and we'll give you a day all hands. Solomon was a brave lad, and he was willing to make the trip alone if his father wanted to do so. But a number of times he had thought of the trail and what it would be like to travel 7 miles through the woods. He wondered what he would do if he met Indians. Would he see them first, or would they see him? Should he run or hide? These questions bothered him more than he would admit. It was quite a relief, therefore, when his father said, "Tomorrow we will go up to the Smallies and invite them to come down next week for my birthday party." Solomon was pleased to know that his father was going too, but he did not want to appear too pleased, or his father might think he was afraid or unwilling to go alone. So he said, "Why do you want to go along, Father?" "For several days I wanted to go and look at the Indian trail. I hope it doesn't pass too close to us. I might not have chosen this place if I had known it was there. Now I want to get a good look at it to find out where it runs. Also," said Amos, "I want to see what kind of place the Smalleys have, and a day away from the axe and saw will be good for us both. We've been working steadily and hard. We need a little change. Maybe we'll do a little hunting too." The next morning they started east through the forest, and a mile away from their clearing, about a mile away from their clearing, they came upon a well-worn path through the woods. It was narrow and obviously only a footpath, but it could be clearly seen winding its way through the woods in both directions. Amos started south, and Solomon wondered if his father were confused about the direction to Middlebury. "I want to see which way it goes below our place," exclaimed his father. They followed the path for a mile or two and found that it met the creek at the point where it made the sharp turn west. So having satisfied their curiosity that much, they turned around and started north. They talked about trees and birds and animals as they walked. They kept a lookout for game, for food was always important. Amos had a large shot in his musket, and Solomon was loaded with smaller shot. Amos was ready for a deer if he saw one, and Solomon would be ready for a quail or wild turkey. They crossed the first creek that Mr. Smalley had mentioned, and then headed for the next one. Before they reached it, it began to rain, and they covered the ends of their muskets to keep the moist out, for wet powder doesn't fire. Then they came to the second stream. The trail went across, but they turned sharply west along the bank, and before long came upon the clearing they took to be the Smalleys. Smoke rose from a sprawling stone chimney. They heard noise from the barn, but at first saw no one. Amos called, "Hello, the house." A woman came to the door and smiled in a friendly manner. "Come on in," she greeted them. "You are soaking wet. Let me get you something hot to drink. Benjamin and the boys are not far off. I know you must be the Stories. I heard about you." Solomon always thought about his mother many times during the day, and sometimes dreamed about her at night, but he was startled now to hear how a woman's voice sounded. It had been weeks since he had seen a woman, and strange feelings of loneliness came over him. Mrs. Smalley went to the door and blew a long blast on a ram's horn, and in no time at all, Mr. Smalley and the boys appeared. Greetings were exchanged, and a noon meal was served. Solomon thought to himself that women had a way with food and men didn't have. The invitation of the roof-raising birthday party was given and accepted, and then the Stories were on their way home through the woods. That night the rain turned to snow, and Amos said that they were not getting the roof on their house any too soon. But the day was clear and warm, and the snow did not last, even though it was a sign of things to come. There were just a few days left now before the roof timbers would be lifted into place. They worked carefully, measuring every timber and then lifting them together. As they lay on the ground to make sure the notches came at the right places, Solomon was set to cutting hickory pegs to hold the rafters together, while Amos used the auger to drill the holes. October 17th was clear and mild, a typical Indian summer day. The summer had not been up long before the friendly call of the Smalleys came up the path from the creek. All four had come. Benjamin carried tools, and Mrs. Smalley had a ginger cake made with cornmeal. As a present, Benjamin handed Amos some nails and said, I thought maybe you could use a few. They come in handy sometimes." Amos thanked him and said that he had brought along a few, but hadn't had to use any yet. They wasted no time. Soon, strong and skilled arms went to work to lift the rafters into place and peg them securely together. "You've done a good job notching these," complimented Mr. Smalley. "It makes a big difference when things fit right." One of the Smalley boys sat astride the rear wall and one astride the front wall. Amos and Benjamin pinned the tops of the rafters together and lifted them up over the ends of the walls, and together they moved them toward the center of the cabin. The first rafters were braced into place at the center, and then others were placed 2 feet to each side until all were in place. The cross pieces were then fitted and the rafters made solid and secure. At noon they stopped for a big venison stew Mrs. Smalley made. Then the last rafters were in place. A recess was declared and the birthday cake was served. As they sat down on planks in the dooryard, Mrs. Smalley started to sing, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow," and all the rest joined in. Mrs. Smalley started singing so high that the men's voices could not keep with her on the high notes. But to Solomon it sounded good, and he swallowed a lump in his throat as he thought of the times he had heard that swung at home and at his church. When the cake was eaten, Benjamin said, "Now let's get on as many roof boards as possible. We'll have to go in an hour." Before the hour was over, most of the boards had been laid and the cabin had a finished look. Though there was much more work to do before it was really livable, thanks were expressed as the Smalleys started toward their canoe. When they were gone, Amos and Solomon stood for a long time looking at what had been done during the day. "That was a real fine birthday present, wasn't it?" said Solomon. Amos nodded his head, stood quiet for a long while surveying a new cabin, then said, "I hope your mother will be happy in it."